Tonight, families hold a vigil ahead of the trial of Jeremy Skibicki.
This concern is based on a fundamental belief in the importance of finding a balance between ensuring that people who use drugs are not unnecessarily criminalized, while all members in communities across this province feel safe.
The BC government changes their tune on decriminalizing some hard street drugs.
It's comforting for them to be able to hear one another's stories and to know that they're not alone in those experiences.
And a gathering for 60 Scoop survivors wraps up in Winnipeg. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. We start tonight here in Winnipeg, where it was day one in a high-profile trial. Accused Jeremy Skibicki is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder for 4 Indigenous women. The alleged killings happened in the spring of 2022. He's pled not guilty to all 4 counts. The jury was not in the room, as this week covers pre-trial proceedings. Today, the defense focused on some constitutional challenges, including whether or not the jury could be impartial. T.R. Wheatley joins us now.
Jeremy Skibicki's lawyer spent the first day trying to convince the judge to toss the jury and to make this a standalone judge trial. Now, the defense had the founder of Main Street Research appear on a screen in the courtroom via video conference. His company has done public polls, mainly in the public sector, for over the past 35 years. The Crown had argued that he had no experience polling the public on criminal justice issues or testifying as a witness in court. What is interesting to note here is that that same company was commissioned by Legal Aid to conduct a public poll earlier this year that aimed to prove that the jury members could not be impartial. Now the accused defense, which are also from Legal Aid, want to use those findings to remove the jury. The proceedings are taking place inside the biggest courtroom here. Most of the seats remain full throughout the day with family members and different Indigenous organizations for their support. It was interesting to see the layout of the room as well, because the accused, who was brought in with shackles on his feet, he sat in a special box to the right side of the courtroom. The closest people to him were the media, as they had us sectioned in our own area. This is out of the ordinary because normally during trials, the accused are usually positioned in a stationary box right in the middle of the courtroom. That area, though, is directly in front of a path where the public can walk past. So this setup is expected to stay the same for the next 6 weeks.
Thanks, TR. TR also attended a candlelight vigil in the same location last night, where the family of Mercedes Myin invited community members for ceremony and to share good memories as they were preparing for the start of the trial. Here's TR explaining that event.
Outside the front doors of this courthouse, the family of Mercedes Myin and their supporters offer a sacred song and prayer to the Creator for a safe journey over the coming weeks. On the eve of the trial for Jeremy Skibicki, a Caucasian man accused of killing Mercedes and 3 other Indigenous women, where Skibicki has pled not guilty on all charges, none of the charges have been proven in court.
It's been very heavy on our hearts, very anxious, a lot of anxiety. This next month is going to be very, very hard on us.
Police believe Mercedes' remains are at this landfill outside the city, along with 2 of the other women, while the 4th woman's partial remains were found at the Brady landfill in 2022. Her grandmother Donna Bartlett shares with the crowd the struggle they've had with trying to get authorities to search for Mercedes' remains.
Until we get her home, we'll be fighting to bring her home. Like I said, even a piece of her would be good. We'll have a piece of her at home at least.
It wasn't until recently that both the federal and provincial government committed $20 million each for the search. Both have also dedicated a combined $700,000 to support the families throughout the trial. Manitoba's Grand Chief says there shouldn't be a one-time commitment because self-care is essential for victims and families going through trials.
It's needed in all our communities, all our nations, that we be able to provide that mental support, that spiritual support, and that cultural support to be able to go into ceremony.
Something that's been crucial to help keep the Myin family stay strong over the past year.
Plenty of supports. A lot of organizations have been helping us. Also, just the community coming out and supporting us has been very big.
While the next few weeks will be some of the longest days for all of the victims' families, the Myins hold on to days like this, where they can celebrate Mercedes' life and keep her spirit alive. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, Saskatoon City Police have announced they will be searching a small section of the Saskatoon City landfill in hopes of finding a missing person. Mackenzie Trottier was 22 when she went missing in 2020 from Saskatoon. Late last year, police found substantial information that points to a small area in the Valley Road landfill. Saskatoon City Police are reminding the public this is still a missing persons case. Police have set aside 33 days to search the area and will be utilizing specially trained search dogs as well as assistance from the Calgary Police Service. The search begins on May 1st. Sunday marked the one-year anniversary of the disappearance of Ramona Peter, a Casca woman who went missing from the Yukon community of Ross River. While Peter's family is hopeful she'll be found safe and sound, the RCMP say more information is needed to find her. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
It's been 1 year since 40-year-old Ramona Peter was reported missing. The Casca woman was last seen at a store in her home community of Ross River on April 21st, 2023. She was reported missing a week later on April 28th. Now 1 year since her disappearance, her whereabouts remain unknown.
I feel hopeful, but there's always that little nagging feeling that she's gone, and our whole family and the whole community just want her home.
Yukon RCMP conducted the most extensive air search to date in hopes of finding Peter at the time of her disappearance. They say a significant amount of time and resources have been invested in looking for her.
We had some initial leads that we followed up and we did a lot of work on, but things have essentially dried up for the last several months.
Langley says Peter's disappearance is still considered active, but new information is needed in order to move the investigation forward.
We have exhausted all of the tips and clues that we have come across up to this point.
Steria says Peter's family won't give up until she's found.
We have to have that hope to continue with our efforts to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Anyone with information regarding the disappearance of Ramona Peter is asked to contact Crime Stoppers Yukon at 867-667-6715 or email www.crimestoppersyukon.ca. We want to hear what you think about this or any other story you see here tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Roger Bido was given day parole in Edmonton on Thursday after being on unescorted temporary absences since February. Bido was found guilty of manslaughter in the deaths of Métis hunters Jacob Sansom and Maurice Cardinal after a confrontation between the two men, Bido and his son Anthony. A high-speed chase on a rural road ended with Anthony Bido shooting both men and leaving them for dead in 2020. Anthony Bido was found guilty of second-degree murder in their deaths and sentenced to life in prison. Anthony will not be able to apply for parole until 2036. We need to take a short break. A new pilot project in BC isn't working out the way the province had hoped. We'll tell you what went wrong with that after the break. Welcome back to APTN National News. The establishment of a national council to oversee the government's progress on reconciliation is on its way to happening. Legislation to create it passed third reading in the House of Commons on Monday. Members of Parliament unanimously passed Bill C-29 324-0. The Reconciliation Council fulfills call to action number 53 in the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. All that remains for the bill to become law is royal assent from Governor General Mary Simon. The Assembly of First Nations, Métis National Council, Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, and the Native Women's Association of Canada all have seats on the council. But in spite of numerous complaints, the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples has been left off of it.
Over 2 years, we met with numerous MPs, we met with senators. Our board of directors did everything we could in terms of trying to get our voice to the table. And unfortunately, it looks like they're going to leave out, 80% of the population, and so it's not a good day for 80% of Indigenous people in Canada.
A pilot project which allowed the decriminalization of small amounts of hard street drugs in British Columbia is not working, according to provincial government officials. APTN's Tina House has more on this story.
Illicit drugs and hard drugs should not be used where kids are playing, where patients are recovering, where community life is lived.
Right across Canada, the opioid crisis is getting worse, and in BC, the situation is becoming dire, with nearly 14,000 people having lost their lives since the epidemic was declared in 2016. In January of 2023, a 3-year pilot project to decriminalize 2.5 grams or less of hard street drugs was enacted in BC.
Instead of being treated as criminals, they will be treated with care and compassion. Decriminalizing people who use drugs is a critical step in tackling the toxic drug crisis.
However, just a year later, many would say it's not working.
Since day one, the British Columbia Association of Chiefs of Police has expressed significant concern with the issue of public consumption of illicit drugs. This concern is based on a fundamental belief in the importance of finding a balance between ensuring that people who use drugs are not unnecessarily criminalized, while all members in communities across this province feel safe.
Now, BC wants to amend the decriminalization project to allow police to arrest addicts using hard drugs in public.
But that compassion, that concern for people who are struggling, does not mean that anything goes. We today have made a formal request to Health Canada to amend the exemption to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which will give the police the tools they need to enforce the law anytime someone is using drugs in an inappropriate location and compromising public safety. In short, this amendment will make public drug use illegal in British Columbia.
We have always said that for decriminalization to succeed, it has to be part of a broader strategy to address the tragic consequences of the drug crisis that has killed far too many British Columbians. Treatment, education, prevention, and enforcement against predatory organized crime groups are equally important.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Montreal's first safe drug use site has opened its doors, but cohabitation has quickly become a problem.
We're still working out a few kinks, but it's not going to solve everything. Of course not, because this is Montreal, and this is a reality that everyone is going through.
Some residents who occupy the same building have multiple concerns, including nudity, screaming, open drug use, and other disturbing behavior. The project's executive director understands the worries and says a separate entrance will soon open that will hopefully solve some of the conflicts. Auditor General Karen Hogan appeared before the House of Commons Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee. The focus for this meeting was her report on First Nations housing. Karen Hogan began with an overview of her latest scathing report. She said Indigenous Services and the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation have made little progress to address the problems in First Nations. NDP MP Lori Idlout asked Hogan if the $918 million announced in the federal budget for First Nations housing would come close to closing the gap.
It was in draft. It has since been finalized, and you can see that that need has almost tripled in order to meet the current housing needs for First Nations communities. So I believe it's much higher than what's sitting in the budget. But this is why you need a plan, right? You can't fund all of these housing needs in 1 year. It would be impossible to even spend that kind of money in a meaningful and intelligent way.
60 Scoop survivors from far and wide wrapped up a two-day gathering in Winnipeg today. We'll tell you more about that after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Spring has sprung in Steinbach, Manitoba, and Dave Menzies shared with all of us these blooming daffodils. Thanks for stopping to smell the flowers, Dave. Remember to send us your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over on the East Coast, 9 degrees in Halifax, snowy and 5 degrees for Charlottetown. Nain, -3 there, Kuujjuaq, +7. Val-d'Or, 10 degrees in rain, Quebec City, +9. Peterborough, rainy and 14 degrees, Sault Ste. Marie, +10 in rain there. Kapuskasing, rainy and 9 degrees, Sioux Lookout, +7. Churchill, 3 degrees, mix of sun and clouds, and snowy and 7 degrees for Norway House. Princess Harbour, snowy and 9 degrees there, Dauphin, +12. Swift Current, rainy and 6 degrees, North Battleford, +15. Uranium City, rainy and 6 degrees, and La Ronge, +14. 8 degrees in rain for Peace River, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Red Deer, mix of sun and cloud, 9 degrees there, Medicine Hat, rainy and +7. Vancouver, mostly sunny and 12 degrees, rainy and 13 degrees for Campbell River. Prince George, 12 degrees there, Smithers, rainy and +14. Watson Lake, mostly sunny, 13 degrees, Rock River, snowy and -8. Wrigley, 9 degrees and sunshine there, Trout Lake, 16 degrees. Paulatuck, snowy and -11, Colville Lake, -5. Baker Lake, mostly sunny, -7 there, Nauyat, -10. Clyde River, mostly sunny and -10 there, and Iqaluit, -4 and snowy. A two-day gathering of 60 Scoop survivors wrapped up in Winnipeg today. It was hosted by the Anish Corporation and the Southern Chiefs Organization. And as APTN Sierra Bettens reports, survivors came from far and wide to meet each other.
Carla Devlin has spent most of her life trying to find who she is.
I didn't fit in the Western world, and I didn't fit in my own community, not knowing where I was from and who my people are. So that has been a difficult journey as far as who am I? Where do I belong?
Devlin is originally from Millbrook First Nation in Nova Scotia, but grew up in Toronto's child welfare system. She's among the hundreds of 60 Scoop survivors gathered at a conference in Winnipeg today. Hosted by the Anish Corporation and the Southern Chiefs Organization, the Finding Our Spirits gathering gives survivors from across the globe a chance to share experiences and reconnect.
It should always be survivor-led, and in anything that we do, and that's how this gathering came to be. And it turned out to be an international gathering because many of the children that were scooped during the 60 Scoop went international.
It's comforting for them to be able to hear one another's stories and to know that they're not alone in those experiences.
Ravensong Gargan and Stephanie Annika traveled from the west coast to the prairies from the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of British Columbia. They are survivors who know that reconnecting can be incredibly arduous.
I've talked to some survivors who are just tired You know, they're crying, they're hurt, they're stressed. They don't know where to turn, so they turn to our society.
Get our records that are not all blacked out would be really helpful, and being able to have records that were not doctored or altered would be also helpful. We're finding there's a lot of 60 scoops that the records are not accurate.
Tanya Ross, originally from Opaskwayak Cree Nation, grew up in the foster care system in Manitoba and Alberta. She experienced hardships and trauma while in care. It led to her involvement with the criminal justice system, where she spent 20 years in prison.
I had to start rebuilding my life outside the walls of prison, and I just put one foot in front of the other. I didn't know how, but I had an amazing support circle, and I knew I wanted to give back to my community, my people, because of what I took.
Today, Ross runs a youth healing lodge and travels as a motivational speaker. A common theme she has noticed among 60 Scoop survivors is the isolation that comes with this connection.
We all have in common that when you're growing up in foster care, you know, in different foster homes and group homes and that, the loneliness of wanting to be with your family. And where's home? I had that question for so long, like, where's home? And my mom always told me, like, home is where you want to make it, my girl.
Devlin spent the past 5 years retracing her roots and a lifetime of feeling lost. She says attending the gathering feels like coming home.
It's been really an emotional journey, but almost a bit like a homecoming, that family reunion that we never had.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
An orca whale calf that captivated the country after becoming stranded in a lagoon in BC has finally freed itself. The chief of the Hadasat First Nation says the orca swam out on its own last week. It was able to make its way past a sandbar under a bridge and is now being monitored in the open ocean. It comes after multiple attempts were made to rescue the orca after she became trapped in late March. The National Newspaper Award winners were announced on Friday, and APTN Investigates had 2 winners in the Special Recognition Citation category. Rob Smith and Paul Barnsley were recognized for their work as part of the Climate Disaster Project. Based out of the University of Victoria, the international project focuses on the harmful effects of climate change through the stories of climate disaster survivors. APTN Investigates Climate Disaster and Oral History told the story of a heat dome over Vancouver and how the extreme temperatures affected people living on the streets in the downtown east side. Great job on that win, Rob and Paul. And that's all the time we have for your Monday news. As always, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, for the latest Indigenous news. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us. Have a great night.